All right, so it is 7:01 and we have a quorum, so let's call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We are hybrid. I see one member who's on Zoom, so I'll start with a roll call vote. Mark?
Yes.
John?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Endry? Marianne?
Here.
Joe? Emily?
Here.
And Joe Carnahan here. All right, so welcome. We have a few folks here today, including some folks presenting. All right, so first thing on our agenda is, well, actually, before we go into public comment, I have to give, and Jeffrey Coram just joined for attendance purposes. But we are going to need another chair, aren't we? I'll scoot this way. One moment. Jeffrey, you should sit up here. I'm sorry. All right. So I do have to, I see that we have 3 members of the select board present, so I do have to, point that out so the select board members know not to deliberate on anything that is, in their purview, which is most town business. So there you go. All right. So with that out of the way, do we have any other comment? Karen?
So did you want to? Is there?
They're not. The chair is here on Zoom, but since you all are not posted, you cannot call to order. Sorry. So all right. I don't see. Well, so we have Bob is in member of the public. I don't know if you have any comments, but. All right, sounds good. That's why we're here. All right, so then let's proceed to liaison reports. It's been a little while since we met. What do people have to report on? Anyone want to go first? Jeffrey, go ahead.
The school committee obviously will be here later talking about the budget, but they are in the middle of the superintendent search process, as well as, I believe, the RISE director search process. So they're hoping to get the superintendent selected before the election in April. So it's a very tight timeline, and they're pushing through. And I think, yeah.
Thank you. Maybe we should just go around and I'll call on everybody in order. So that would be John up next.
So nothing real major from CPDC, but they were discussing updates to the ADU bylaw in their past meetings. That we've learned that ADU applications have tripled in 2025. So it's still not a huge number, but it's more than we were getting in the past. So maybe some new growth news on that front.
Thank you. Ed?
No report.
Okay. We're still building Killam. Yes. Okay. I said we're still building Killam. That's usually your...
Correct.
Okay, good. Just checking. All right. Andrew?
So since last time we met, Jason...
You got to get real close to these mics, I'm afraid.
Yep. So I wanted to just update that Jason Small has been appointed as a general manager for the light department, and we successfully stole him from the Denver Selected Division. So that's great. But other than that, so I have to report back.
Thanks. Emily?
We're going to talk about mine later.
Ooh, now in suspense. All right. Switch to the other side since I think chairs were supposed to go last. Marianne?
I guess since Jeff didn't announce it, and it's Carla Nazaro was not running for school committee again, but Jeffrey Coram is. Not that I'm plugging you, but that's just another candidate. And I honestly decided to take a select board break. So please, someone else give a select board update because I don't know what's going on. That was my New Year's resolution: less select board. No offense.
I can't judge. I haven't been watching them either. Joe?
Nothing to report.
Okay, nothing from Joe. Mark?
Nothing.
All right. So the main thing I have to report on is the CPA study committee, which is preparing to present our recommendations to the select board next week, Tuesday, February 10th select board meeting. it's the result of almost 2 years of work. So I'm certainly looking forward to that and invite people to tune in. Let's see. All right, I guess I'm actually not sure of the protocol, whether I can ask the select board for an update or whether that gets deliberational. Maybe we don't take any chances. All right, okay. I mean, it is important what the select board is doing, for the record. I'd like to say that there for the benefit here. Yes, Marianne.
The most important update, Trader Joe's is coming to Reading.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
No, that's no.
No. Matt Rosson, did you have anything you wanted to share before we jump into the agenda here?
No, nothing too new. Like we just said, Trader Joe's is coming to Reading. I can confirm that. They haven't allowed us to say what location it is, but people are guessing about that. Reading's a small town in a lot of ways. So that was sort of the big news. We are meeting on Tuesday is the next select board meeting. The agenda will be posted tomorrow in the packet. So that's about it. Thank you.
All right, well, let's keep the agenda moving along then here. Speaking of agendas, so the next item is an approval of deficit spending for snow and ice.
Do you want to talk about it?
Go ahead and we'll get Chris here too.
So just as standard procedure, when we are entering deficit spending, we get a vote from the FinCom to acknowledge that that we're in deficit spending. That storm last week was quite a doozy, and we'll be asking for a significant amount for snow and ice at April town meeting, which is our normal practice, is to replenish at April town meeting. But in order to deficit spend, technically, we're supposed to make sure FinCom is aware and approves the deficit spending.
Matt, did you have anything to add?
No, that's correct. We also have Chris Cole, who's our DPW director, here tonight. If there's any specific questions, this happens. This is anticipated. We always keep our fingers crossed when we do the budget and hope that we're going to stay within it. But we purposely budget it low, as you know, because every year is unpredictable. This year, there was a lot of ice early on. We had to spend a lot on salt and paying people to go out there and salt the roads. And then, of course, we had the major storm a couple of weeks ago. So we're already, unfortunately, over. We find ourselves in this situation a lot. And so we're coming to you to ask for permission to spend deficit.
All right. Is there a form for a motion we should be making here, or?
I would just do a simple motion to approve. We do have a letter in there from me that Sharon drafted, just asking for the approval. So I would just, make a motion to approve the deficit spending for snow and ice.
Please, Joe.
I guess this is a question for Chris. So with the first, you guys did a great job. We haven't seen this much snow for a while, right? And I know you're still clearing, but I noticed today they're still clearing some of the roads, and they're even wider than I've ever seen them after a snowstorm. But is that still coming out of the snow budget, or is that just covered by a regular DPW?
For the most part, it's coming. If it's during the day, it's coming out of the regular, DPW, salaries. But if it's overtime, it's coming out of the snow and ice.
Okay. And then I'm just trying to think, at the timing of this storm, did we have to pay more overtime because of Sunday? It was good in some ways, but
well, I mean, it's regular time and a half for Sunday, but they have contractual requirements. Once they reach a certain number of hours, that they get additional compensation that we have to pay for it too. So,
okay. And then in terms of contracting with private plow operators, right? Does that help us or hurt us, or?
Oh, it definitely helps us because we can't do it with the the staffing levels that we have on our own. So, we need the contractors to fill out all the plow routes that we have.
But are we still below average with the number of private contractors that are willing to do that, or could we use more of them? I'm just trying to figure out.
We can always use more. It just makes the job easier. But we get by with what we have, and that's what we basically do every year. We increase the rates every year, and just manage with what we have.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mark?
Yeah. Just what is the spend to date?
Oops.
Yeah.
That's loud.
I think it's 705, and we had a budget of 675, so we're over by 35,000 already.
Any other questions from the committee? Well, then in that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the deficit spending for snow and ice removal that has been presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ed. Last chance for discussion before we vote. All right, let's vote. Mark,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Joe McDonough,
Yes.
and Joe Carnahan, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no, thank you. I was able to get here, so thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is a presentation on the Pleasant Street Center status and future planning. So please take it away.
Come on, Katie. This is you too. I'm not doing this roadshow by myself. Hello. How is everyone this evening? I'm bringing my town moderator energy. You feeling it? It's gonna be a long night. Okay, so we're going to be short. We're going to be quick. This is fun. This is a good time. This is Katie Gabriello. She is our Director of Operations, and she manages procurement, risk, and communications for the town. Kind of a rock star. I hired her. Tonight we're talking about the future of the Pleasant Street Center. Right now, Recal is slated to open, soft opening, first week in August 2027. Okay. Tomorrow, fun fact, we'll be getting the bids back for the Recal construction at 2:00. So that's exciting. But we have to start making a real determination about where we're going to go with this building. It will be surplus. So what can we do? We have a short presentation to go through, and then we're here to collect your ideas, your thoughts, questions, and we are putting those into an analysis, feedback for the select board. We'll also be doing a survey for the public. We're visiting boards, committees, and commissions because there's no monopoly on good ideas. And through your unique roles with the town, you have interesting perspectives that are valuable to this process. This is also a part of good procurement hygiene, if you will. Next slide, please. I made that term up. That's nice. Thank you. So the Pleasant Street Center, as you know, this is, was originally built in 1883 as our first municipal building. It's freaking me out to hear my voice.
Technical difficulties. One moment, please.
So
We should be good. Go ahead.
it was finished. It has a finished living area of 4,300 square feet. We did a commercial appraisal last year. This is a properly done appraisal. It was somebody who's qualified to do a historic structure. And the determination at that time for April was $965,000. Potential rental net operating income would be $72,000. I think that's per year. And I wish it were per month, but it's only 4,300 square feet. But I like where you're going with that. So the site's located, and where it's located, it falls short of the lot requirements for a developer to turn it into housing. It could go to a housing authority to be made housing. It's on the historic registries, and there is Katie added the preservation restriction agreement after we met with the historic commission, which controls limits to the interior and exterior. But we can we can work with that, where we can make an effort to reduce some of that. Next slide, please. Katie, can you lead us through this one?
I can. Thanks, Jane. So some of this might look familiar from town meeting. As Jane mentioned, we've been hitting the roads to other boards and committees. So if it does look familiar, we'll be quick on this one. This is just outlining some of the potential uses that we could be looking at for this historic building. So of course, we could sell the property. We could gift it to the Reading Housing Authority, potentially to create affordable housing here in town. We could keep it for future town use. We could also explore leasing it to a for-profit or a nonprofit. That's where some of that the rental income that we talked about on the previous slide may come from. And you can see some of the options. It's font's a little small here, but some of the town use, we are always talking about the lack of storage here in town. The town clerk's office in particular has brought that up. Additional office space or the like, that is something that we could utilize from a town perspective. From a commercial lease, you can see some of the options that we've seen in other towns. And if we go to the next slide, please, Jackie, you'll see some examples that we've pulled from other tier communities like Wakefield and Peabody of nonprofit usage. We have the Inspire Cafe in Wakefield, which works with the Boys and Girls Club and provides employment opportunities for folks with different abilities. Breaking Grounds Cafe was created by the Northeast Park, and that supports a variety of local restaurants. Both of these happen to be food service related, but we thought these were nice examples to highlight ways in which nonprofits could utilize space similar to what we have at the Pleasant Street Center and bring back something pretty cool to the community. And then on the next slide, some additional examples of repurposing spaces similar to the Pleasant Street Center. We looked at Natick and Newburyport, and as you can see, certainly a similar look to what we have at the Pleasant Street Center. I believe both of these are former fire stations, just like we have in our municipal building here. And so these have both been repurposed to be arts related. So the Center for the Arts and the Firehouse Center for the Arts, these serve as community centers that focus on live performances, art galleries, community events, maybe musical performances, movie screenings, the like. And this is something that we've heard as we've started this kind of roadshow from boards and committees as being something that, thinking about what a wonderful location we have for this building, situated right downtown. This is something that could be, a very exciting way for this building to be repurposed, activating the downtown area, potentially in the evenings, especially. So we wanted to highlight these 4 examples as something that we see as, potential usages for this building.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, other feedback we've received is it could be used to house important town historical documents. It could be a little bit of a museum. It could be my favorite word lately is I'm going to say it, Athenaeum. Could have a little Athenaeum. Who's with me? I get the same look from everybody. So just other utilizations of the space.
We get a letter.
There was a question from the committee. What is an Athenaeum?
Take it away, Jane.
It's a library.
You got one.
No, it's not that kind of library. It's not necessarily, but it's sort of like we could put some of our historical documents, but you could also have little, performances. You could have, you could activate the space, so you could have like coffee houses, and you could have performances. You said theater, author talks, lectures. It's a place where people can get a little cultural enrichment. So some important procurement considerations. With the sale or lease of any property, we have to engage in a competitive process, competitive solicitation. So while we have some ideas, we've also heard from the food pantry in town, they're interested in utilizing the space. We can't say we're only going to give this to, a food pantry that's based in Reading. It's supposed to be competitive. That being said, we do have the flexibility to put in a solicitation language that says preferential treatment will be given to Reading-based nonprofits, something like that, and we're allowed to do that. Let's see. If the select board may lease the Pleasant Street Center, the building, in whole or in part, but it does not provide usage of the parking lot. In order for the parking lot to be leased, we have to take that to town meeting. We don't know why. It's a wonderful, we'd love to see that rule changed. So at least there's alignment both, but with land, it has to go to town meeting. So part of the reason we are doing this work now is so we have a good sense of which process we need to entertain so that we do it the right way, because nothing's ever easy. And before we started the roadshow, the initial feel we received from the select board seemed to favor a lease and not a sale, seemed to favor to keep the building within the town. Other feedback we've received is that whatever happens with the building, it should pay for itself. So the town's not paying to keep it running. That whatever is in there is covering all of the operational costs. That's some early feedback we've done. So next slide, please. And there we are. That's what we have for you, and now it's your turn. We're not looking for a vote. There's no vote needed. We're just looking for your feedback.
All right. Go ahead. I see Marianne.
Hi. So thank you for presenting the ideas. I think, the community repurposing are interesting. I'm not sure if Newburyport is the fairest comparison to Reading. I mean, they've already got, the ocean there. They get a lot of draw, and whatever they did with that building is just gravy on that. I don't know where the location is in Natick. One of my questions just is, it looks disappointing to me to see the appraised value. It makes me think, notwithstanding the money, we wouldn't get that much for it. Did the appraisal include the parking lot?
Yeah. It included the whole parcel to sell or lease.
So, I mean, I tend to side with the select board in leasing it, because we could always have it be a short-term lease if the town needs it. It's there, because we're not going to be able to, in the future, get a market rate property. But my one other question is, if a senior center wasn't in there with whatever its needs are, what does it cost to run this building is a year, like to keep the heat going, to keep basic maintenance? Is it a huge amount of money? Like, what is the pay for itself kind of cost? And is that comparable to the $72K rent?
I can get that number for you. Joe Huggins has that figure. I don't have that, so it's a great question. I believe the operating costs, like heat and so forth, were included, and so that $72,000 is the net profit we would receive after all of those expenses are paid. But I can double check that.
Thank you. That was all
Oh, please do when you get that. Share that with the committee, because Marianne's not the only one with that question, I'm sure. Okay. All right. Jeff.
I did think that's what it said in parentheses, that was net.
Yes, no, it did. So just to be clear, I understood that as net as well. However, since not all of the options necessarily involve getting a market rate rent for it, then, like, for example, if the town were to use it without renting it to someone, just to keep it as storage space or as a center that's run by the town or any of those things, Marianne has a very fair question, which is, what is it going to cost to keep the lights on in that building while we do this, given that no one's paying us rent for it at that time? It's a fair question.
It's a difficult question, though, in that if you're just storing records in there, then you don't need to heat it very much, right? So, I don't know.
I bet Joe can give us a expert, nuanced answer. So I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of Joe's, McDonough.
Hello, Joe. Thank you. I guess my question is related to the cost too. Like, do we know, like, I thought the pitch for the Living Center was that there was a lot of concern about mold, flooding in that building. And I'm concerned about the operating cost too, but like longer term, like, what is the assessment for that building? Like, I have no idea. Like, what does the roof look like? Or I love the building, but I'm just curious, like, do the bricks need to be repointed in 10 years? Like, is there any like capital plan for that building? It'd be really good to know that too. And then related to like leasing, like we would basically act as a landlord, which makes me nervous as a municipality, right? There's a lot of risk that goes with that. We're not in that business today, at least. I don't think a lot of towns are. Like, do we know other towns that like are in that type of model? It just seems, we may be kind of stretching what we're the comfort zone that we typically handle.
So like the Natick Center for the Arts is sold to an organization that manages that space and did the work, and they so it's a nonprofit organization, and that became the Natick Center for the Arts. So that's not a lease scenario. So we can find out more information about what are the ages, what are the future capital considerations for the Pleasant Street Center. And Joe knows how old all those things are. The building is up to code. The elevator is there, the sprinklers are there, but it's a problematic building. It's constantly a smell of gas in there. There are other things. It's an old building that's been retrofitted. So,
and like the model where, like, I'm not opposed to, like, if we looked at the 3 affordable units, right? is like who would pay for that reconfiguration work? Would that be the Reading like housing?
Yeah.
Or could we leverage the trust? Like we have a trust fund, right? With about, was it 350,000? Is that right? 400.
So if the housing authority, if the town were to gift it to the housing authority, then they could utilize a variety of tax credits, particularly because it's a historic building. They get a greater amount of tax credits, and the trust and so forth. And then they can do financing, and they can use their budgets they get from the state to pay for financing. To do that redevelopment work. There are organizations like Choice Housing out of Chelmsford helps put together developers and financing packages so housing authorities can create more housing, but it would not be on the town to do that. Okay.
But if it did, in that model though, with the town, like I guess the Reading House Authority, the town would still be responsible for long-term capital type projects, right? And maintaining that building, or
we would gift it to the housing authority and
be completely
for them to do it. That's correct. It would be in their budget to manage those things.
And the 3 units, like, seems like we could get more than 3 units.
Maybe you could. If you look at some of the adaptive reuse that I've seen lately, particularly in elderly affordable housing, there's a lot of adaptive reuse, and the apartments are 350, 400 square feet. They're small, efficiency apartments. They have a bathroom, they have a gallery, just a kitchen on one side of the wall, and it's basically a small studio. If you did something like that, you might be able to get more units out of it, particularly on the main floor and the top floor.
Okay.
And then the basement could be used for storage or other things.
Yeah. And under that gifting model too, we could also limit the amount of parking spaces that went with it. I'm sure, right?
Well, you would just give the whole lot to the, where you could have it be a municipal lot with certain spaces, I guess, set aside for residents, and maintenance. But that could be worked out in the future. I don't know.
Okay. And then the final question is, and then you could also have a hybrid model, right? Like the food pantry needs a home, right? So you could have them, especially if it was under a gifting model. I'm sure the Reading Housing Authority wouldn't mind sharing. I'm not speaking for them, but
no, you're absolutely right. It could be multi-use. So there could be something that's on the main floor that would be able to utilize the kitchen there really well in that larger space, and then maybe the basement space, and then the upstairs space is more like office space, where there's a couple of meeting rooms and offices, and that could go to a private business that needs some office space right downtown that doesn't mind sharing, and that can be, I'm fairly certain, well done, and it's something we can do with procurement. Lease it to 2 different entities.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because those approaches excite me much more than $6,000 a month in rent, which I can see us eating through that quickly in the long run. So just personal.
Okay.
John.
Question on the leasing parking lot. If we were going to go to the leasing, town meeting approves at least, is it per tenant on the parking lot, or is it just we approve that we're leasing the parking lot one time?
It's the latter.
The latter.
Yeah.
So if the
and it
tenant
would be a
changes-
lease that's brought forward. So you would approve the lease.
And then if a new tenant moves in and they need to have a new lease, do we have to reapprove?
I think if there's a new tenant, you'd have to, if it's a new lease, yeah. It's not just the decision to lease it. It's the lease.
Okay.
A document.
So
agreement.
Would we be worried at all that would discourage tenants if they have to negotiate a lease for the building and then have to wait until town meeting afterwards? Okay.
I think so.
And then my other question is, if we were to sell the building and whoever bought it remodeled, the inside in some way for whatever they're going to use it for, that would increase the value of the building, presumably? Is that new growth, or does it stay the same in terms of increasing our tax base?
If we were to sell it,
Yeah. And then they
have to
remodel.
get a building permit, then yeah, they would go through that same
So
process.
then that's new growth. That could increase the tax base.
It could increase it. I see where you're going with this, and I love the direction. Yes, I don't know how much it would be with the preservation restriction on it. That's another road we have to go down once we decide which road we're taking. But yeah.
Okay. I have a question that follows up on John, so I'll jump in. So, out of curiosity, do you know what is the source of the the stupid rule, as we've already started referring to it, that leasing the building has a different set of approvals versus leasing the building and the parking lot?
It's a great question, and I'm pretty sure it goes back to the Magna Carta. Okay. Like, nobody knows.
Strange way to spell MGL, but okay.
Right, yeah, exactly. I don't, do you know? Is there any rhyme or reason?
I think it's the difference between like the developed property and like the land itself. That's where they make the distinction. So it certainly is a situation where someone could lease the space within the Pleasant Street Center and they could use the parking lot, but they cannot have exclusive rights to the parking lot. So the town would retain the ability to have it as a municipal lot. But yes, we'd have to go through the full process if it was selling the land.
Right.
And that's for any land, developed or undeveloped, but parking is obviously a little bit developed.
Man.
So maybe it's related to the underlying zoning of the parking lot, and the town meeting could rezone it to go with it. I don't know if maybe there's a prominent member of the audience who might know the answer to any of these histories. No? Okay. You do know?
You're asking a lot of questions that I've gone through in the past.
Well, yeah. I kind of thought so. Thank you.
That's the advice of council. If the land is different.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob Blurlaw, Share County Road. Is this thing working okay?
Is it?
Okay.
Okay. It's a little quiet, but okay.
The distinction between the parking lot and the building itself did come up in the past, having nothing to do with the current situation, and I think it's historic. And I don't think it's anything that Reading can easily do without a home rule petition to change. I think if you look at the deeds and see who owns it, I think there's slight differences. And I also remember the historic aspect was put on the building and not the parking lot, and that made a big difference between sort of the two parcels, if you will. When I was here, we never sold a building, so I have no experience. I certainly defer to the procurement folks. We did sell land, and that's a lot more straightforward. But we only sold land that was kind of smallish parcels. For instance, up in Lothrop, near where I live, there was some land the town held on to in case it needed a water tank. Once we joined the MWA, it didn't really need that. So eventually one of the boards said, let's go through our surplus property. And that was one of them. And a developer bought it and bought a house and put up a house. So most of the land that I sold when I was here was very limited in scope. There weren't a lot of alternative uses, and there weren't any municipal uses unless you're going to put up a cell tower and make everyone unhappy. So it was really just sell the land to abutters to add on to their land, or in some cases it was a big enough parcel. And then we also purchased land, such as down at the new senior center. All of this is much more complicated than you think it might need to be. And it's really important that these guys are here to do it, because any one slip up and the whole thing can get unraveled. So, I'm representing someone who'd like to use the property to the food pantry, either whether the food pantry is in a position to purchase it outright or just lease part of the building. Doesn't either one is possible. Unfortunately, they've outgrown their space. We thought COVID maybe was a temporary thing for that, but it isn't. It's busier now than it was during COVID, and they really need new space. They really need their own space. And they have three alternatives. This is one of them. And the hard thing is for them to be patient and understand the things I'm telling you is going to take some time. So, they're doing their best to be patient. And I know the town's working hard at that. But it's great to kick around the ideas, but in the back of your head, just realize there's twists and turns that may make some of the things you think is the best thing not that easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I guess I'm not particularly inspired by that the Mayhem thought, in that it seems like a lot of the things that you've suggested there were things that really belong in the library, or were things that we were doing in the senior center but didn't work well because the restrooms there's only a single restroom that's upstairs. So putting on a big event in the space that's downstairs is a nice space, but people coming in are going to need a restroom, and so some of those things didn't quite make sense. The food pantry did sound. I think I had heard something about that as a possibility before. That sounds like an interesting possibility to me.
Just a point of information, there are bathrooms in the basement as well.
Okay.
But none on the main floor.
Just sort of like
To your
this
point.
building, actually. Yeah.
Ed.
Thanks, Gasper. This is excellent and obviously kind of a worthwhile endeavor. I echo a lot of the questions that the rest of the committee has asked. I think specifically around what's the number to keep it self-sustaining. I think that's that's a big piece of it. And I think a lot of the questions that Joe asked. Still owning an historic building from 1883 is going to have lots of hair on it as far as maintenance and everything else from a capital perspective. And I think that's the part of it. I think I worry about the most is I think we're trying to be in a position where we're trying to streamline what we're doing and how we're operating as a town government, and kind of if there's a chance for us not to extend ourselves. And something where we're not having to maintain another building, I think is probably something that we should be looking forward, especially as we look at how just how we operate in general. I do think it's important to have some of these other scenarios kind of mapped out, and again, and I think to Bob's point and some other discussion, it's very tough to project, all the way out. But understanding that, okay, if one lease option doesn't work, okay, well, if you sell it, to John's point, do we now start to see revenue from the tax piece? And so it would be good to kind of understand a scenario all the way down to what the net operating is in kind of in each of them. But I do think that the needs of the food pantry, having something that's a draw to the downtown, whether it's some of those other kind of mixed use places, ideas, I think are really exciting to be able to explore. But I think there's some qualifiers, like it really has to make sense for what the town of Reading wants to do. And I think that's, I don't think, this is a shiny kind of thing to, in a new endeavor, but I think we can't lose sight of what kind of like our core, kind of, options are and what we should be doing as a town. And I think we're not some of the other towns that, that have, these types of buildings, and they can operate a little bit differently. I think we run pretty lean, and that's for a reason. And so I worry about us kind of overextending by being a landlord or operating leases that we might not necessarily have experience doing. The other question too is, around that too, because I do think that extends to like, how it's remodeled. Like depending on what you do, like who's on the hook for that remodel, whether it's the food pantry or things like, I think those are, all things that we just need to be able to have, visibility into. And I think that would be important.
Mark?
Yeah, to sort of follow up on Ed and John's comments, I think if we looked at selling, if you could sell the building and the parking lot, originally the Recal location there was going to be like a 25 or 30,000 square foot building. So I'm assuming if it got sold, whether it's residents or whatever, it could be that many square feet. So I think that would generate, to follow up on John, I don't know what, property tax, but I think it'd be, significant from what we're getting today. So I think looking at selling it is looking at selling the building and the lot and what could go there and what it would generate. And maybe, they have to keep the existing building as a historical site, but maybe part of it could still be used as, for the food pantry. But, could it be more than just that one building would be my question.
That's a great question we can flesh out.
Emily, I see your hand.
just want to add on a little bit to Ed, Mark, John. I too excited about some of the possibilities for the leasing option, but thinking about the empty spaces that we've had around town for years and in some cases decades. Thinking about how long, like the Walgreens building, I don't even know what it is anymore. Dollar store, but same general area, right? And so if we don't attract someone to take up that lease, every month that sits, it's not a net 70, it's a negative 25 or whatever. So if we, like Ed said, if we have some plans or, scenario A, B, and C, and things we think are very likely, not so likely, medium likely, I think that would be really helpful as you're trying to figure out what to do with this property. But my initial, reading the packet, I was like, leasing feels very risky to me, especially in a place where we're trying to tighten our belts. So, but thank you for the presentation.
Andrew, go ahead. It's more of a comment, but I am usually, maybe it's me personally, but I'm always against selling properties. I'm always about retaining properties. And the reason being that if you look at the town in the future of maybe 5 to 10 years, the services of the town will probably be increasing. The town hall here is relatively small for the workforce that they have. And what's going to happen is that we're going to be looking for space probably in 5 to 8 years or maybe sooner. As the town expands, there's more residents, there's buildings, the new MBTA is probably going to bring some new development, so there's going to be more need for services. So that property there is close to the police station, close to downtown, close to our town hall, so there's probably going to be a need for it in the future. So I'm going to say it right now, against selling that property. The use, I love the idea of being a hybrid use, and when I say a hybrid use is a nonprofit such as a food pantry, it's actually ideal for that building, and then retain some of the other offices if they don't need to list the whole space for town use. And the other thing to keep in mind is that ideally you want the building to pay for itself. And the way that it pays for itself is by listing it, one for food pantry. But also we need to be a little more practical. For example, Reading Retirement right now pays rent to to someone that owns the building in Haven Street. So one idea is to move that kind of town, or I know it's under its own governing body, but it pays rent right now to for-profit or whatever the LLC that owns the building is, but it could easily move there and then it will pay the town. So the money stays within us. So that's one solution for it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is what's important for that building is that it's right downtown, and it should serve, if we sell it, you're gonna make probably $1 million, and then the taxes that you will get from it, you're not gonna realize it until like 5-6 years from now. So the proximity to our current buildings, such as the police, especially the police, as we expand, and the town hall, I think that property is more valuable than just selling it. And there is other ways to fund it. I know recreation is always looking for space, but with the new building there, maybe they don't need it that much. But there's other town clerk always looking for space. And I get motivated because I've been doing a lot of business in Beverly, and what happens there is they own there's Beverly offices all over downtown. And what that does is that it increases the people walk in town offices, and then it increases the foot traffic. So what that means is somebody comes in here and they need to go to the building because there's a town office there, they're walking right downtown. So all of the downtown businesses probably going to benefit from it. So that's my comment for that building.
Thank you.
So I know with the recal that it's going to have a senior center portion and a big sports portion, but there's other towns, there's been clamoring by different people to have some kind of a teen center, or it doesn't have to be sports, but just another kind of spot for them to go. And I'm not saying the town would take on that liability, or who would run it out. When you said recreation, it made me think of that like combined with a food pantry or storage, there could be something like that too, that there'd be a big need because there's other towns that are developing that, and teens don't care about, the bathroom downstairs. I mean, I know we have to have everything be accessible, but I think that, like you said, that's why I didn't understand the appraisal. It depends on the usage, but it's so convenient to so many things that.
Actually, the police department would want to use that building at some point.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'll go ahead and weigh in myself. I'm very similarly to Henry, and I just selling. There's the whole joke about buy land, they're not making it anymore. Buy historic buildings, they're not making those anymore. There's an awful lot of things about that place that are not. We would never get again. We would never have a chance to get again the location or anything like that. If it were to, become a sort of market rate real estate property. So, yeah, that does certainly. My inclination is to look at basically everything besides selling before selling. I do recognize the budget problem. I mean, I recognize all the different constraints here. Leasing is a pain. Being a landlord is a pain. But on the other hand, we are, as this committee knows well, and as town staff knows well, our budget is limited as well and is coming under pressure. So, figuring out some way to square that circle of don't sell it because, Reading has been here for hundreds of years and would like to be for hundreds of years more. And, heaven knows what we might want to use something in the center of town for even in 10 years. But I certainly don't want to give up that option. So I would want to explore all the other options first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate the lots of good feedback. Every committee has their own lots of good feedback. So thank you. I mean,
none of us.
I can't place favorites, Ed, but
There we go.
No, thank you very much.
I can see the way you were saying that.
All right. So, I do want to mention, in case either we only have 2 select board members on the call now. So if it is appropriate at some point to call on either of them for something, we don't have to worry about an open meeting law situation there. Just sharing that for the record. All right. So moving along in our agenda, the Division of Local Services offered a financial policy seminar here in Reading at Reading's request, but attended by many other towns at the library just last week. And I'm not sure who of us should talk first. Maybe I'll offer it to Matt and Sharon first. But we went through, we talked about financial policies, which is a topic that this committee has discussed many times before. And we've definitely got some thoughts. Several of us were there. Jeffrey, Emily, Joe McDonough was there for part of it, and I was there as well. I had Karen and Chris and Carla from the select board there as well. So, Matt and Sharon, did you have any opening thoughts on this?
Sure, I'll start. I thought it was a really great seminar workshop. It was a good day. We had requested it at FinCom and the select board's request. In the past, I guess as part of the community compact, the state would come in and actually write these policies for you, and it would take anywhere 3 to 4 months to do. And then recently, they thought the most effective way is to sort of go out and teach people about the policies, have the towns take the first crack at it. They would be available for some high-level review if needed. And they do that by having these larger workshops. When I approached the state, they said that there were other similarly situated towns that wanted these. And so I said, why don't we host it in Reading, bring people out there? And it was a very good, well-attended seminar workshop. We got a lot out of it. One thing, we have a lot of policies, and Sharon has the book right here. A lot of the policies that were covered at the workshop, we have some variation of. which is good. So we're in good stead. There are other policies that may be a little bit new to us that we want to implement. We want to take a look at really everything we have and see. I don't know that for Reading they had one document which I can share if you haven't shared, a template for one big set of policies. Our policies are a little more scattered, and part of it is by necessity. Some are in bylaws, some are in FinCom policies. I don't know that we'll ever have like one big book that it's covered under one authority, but I think we have a lot of different of the bases covered. But we had a good discussion. It was good to hear what other towns were doing. I think we're in great shape financially when I hear about what goes on in other towns as well and the way they do things. Not to knock any of the towns that were there, but and I think what we're doing, Sharon can speak to it a little bit, but we are going through the draft document that they gave us to see what parts of it already fit in our policies. Maybe if there's something new, we can have a new policy there. And look at it. And, it's always good to sort of refresh, too, even though we have policies. FinCom, they want to look at it and say, okay, we can refresh that or change some of the limits and whatnot. The same with the bylaws and other policies that are out there. So all in all, I think it was a good start. I'll maintain a relationship with the state on this, as will Sharon, to walk through it. And anybody that wants to help on it and give feedback, we're always looking for more help in that area. So, Sharon, did you have anything to add?
Can you hear me? Last time, I don't think everybody could hear me. So I thought it was a good conference. I felt like the templates they had, the thing that I really liked about their templates is that they had references to the chapters of the law, the sections of the law that are pertaining to that area. So it was good because I think you could review all those sections and make sure that everything you have in your current policy actually matches up with current law. I think that's important. A lot of what they went through, we did have those policies. Maybe there were a couple that we didn't. But like I said, I think you got to look at these policies regularly and make sure that they're up to date with what current law is and also what our thinking is at the point that we're looking at them. So I have them. I had brought them to the training thinking I'd be chatting, but it was really more about looking at their template. So I plan to look at them, each and every one of them, and kind of compare them to what their template was suggesting and see if I can make some first round drafts, to look at and have us review.
Are there, I guess maybe next I should ask the other FinCom members who were there if any of you have comments to share. I have a list of notes and questions I want to share, but I'm, again, trying not to go first.
Good job. I'll be your guinea pig here. Yeah, so one takeaway for me was that, and I'm not just saying this because Sharon's next to me, but we are fortunate to have her. Like when I heard what other towns are struggling with, or when they talk about policies, I'm not watching Sharon day to day, but I've heard her reference these things in the past. So, tip of the hat, you should, hopefully you feel valued here. The other things that takeaways for me were more, there was one talk about a capital plan committee, and I don't know if we really need a capital plan committee, but there was that notion of metrics around the capital budget. And I know that happens today, where there's a lot of conversations across the different town departments, school, et cetera, to prioritize our capital items. And Sharon does a great job at the spreadsheet that she creates. But maybe if there's some way to stop making it too onerous, that might help some of the decision making. Because I know sometimes I see that capital plan, and yes, we can always put more money at road, but really to know, is that $80,000 or $180,000 dump truck, is that an A, B, or C, or however metric we want to look at, without making it too convoluted. The other thing is they showed us some nice data sets, but unfortunately you have to download them all into Excel. So I think you'll go in the same place, Jeffrey. It'd be nice to look at our peer groups again, and potentially there's a lot of data out there, but the software that they use is very limited. Basically, they have a lot of data, put that into Excel, right, and go wild, right? So I think there's an opportunity there. And then the other thing is if myself can help or anyone else that was there, like Sharon, updating some of the policies, I think she could use some help, right? So
Jeffrey, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, so I echo what Joseph was saying about the capital plan and knowing the priorities, right? That we see it and we understand, things are shifted around here and there, but I don't have a good sense of, why did the dump truck get moved up this year? Where is it? The kind of background information that put it on the list this year as opposed to next year. Right? I'm not sure if a dump truck is specifically this year, but that just sort of like we know it's there somewhere. There's some justification, but it's not in the spreadsheet. And I'm not, without making it too burdensome, as you say, how do we add some more of that information so that we can say, yes, this is why we approved this particular shuffling, reordering of things on the capital plan when we come to town meeting. And I guess I don't actually know all of the finance plans. I know that, for example, the school committee has particular dates by which they must submit their budget, that they vote on it at a particular time. And they, I don't know to what extent we have policies that say, for the other departments, you have to get your budget in by such and such a time. And there was some, I think they mentioned that some towns don't have that, and it's always been done by such and such a time. But then if somebody comes in and doesn't get their thing in, there's not a policy you can point to and say, hey, that's actually the policy. It's not just I asked you to do it. It's really so. I don't, I defer then obviously to the town staff to say, these are the policies we need because this hasn't been an issue before, but we see this as a possible case where something could come and hinder us in being effective in the future. And I thought also that for us, the first half of the workshop was really good for us in terms of policies on capital plans and budget planning. And the second half was all on operations, which we really don't get into, right? So like when you reconcile your accounts and make your deposits and things, it's like, okay, then, I mean, if we need to vote on such a thing, we're happy to, put a stamp of approval on it, but clearly that's not something we're generally as finance committee involved with those decisions.
Emily, anything you want to add?
I will echo Joe's comment. We are very lucky to have Sharon at the helm. There were some comments from some of the peer community or the other communities that were there that was like, oh, Sharon does her thing and does her thing really well. So really appreciate you doing all the work you do, Sharon. And then the peer community data, if you don't know, I am a statistician by trade, so I downloaded all the spreadsheets and I merged into a master database, and I'm doing some modeling because I'm a nerd. So I would love to talk with you more about that, Sharon, at some point. Joe did it too. This is like nerd central.
Nerd chairs and co-chairs.
Yeah, we're doing great, but I
generating a new peer group anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Volunteered
to take that on. And
I'm starting to try to figure out what that looks like with with stats instead of with best guesses. I'm like, they're kind of the same size. So, not to get too technical and nerdy, but I've been trying to, in each metric, like what communities are within 5% of us, basically. And then if there are people that hit more or less, yeah. Anyway, so would love to talk more about that at some point, but not today.
Can we share that merge database with the group?
It's public data, so I don't see why not. Yeah.
We'll just share that with the group. I think it's the question.
I'll clean it up and then share it.
I mean, actually, yeah, this is in fact a thing that we kind of learned this power on the CPA committee where we can just ask Jax to put things on the town website. I think on the town website, it's magical. And so, yes, would be if you have a snapshot of their, whatever 7 or 8 different spreadsheets merged into one, I bet you could share that with Jackson and any of us could download it from the thing. Yes, I did the same thing during the, as Jeffrey said, the first half was about planning, which is, what we help with here. And the second half was operations, which was a good opportunity for me to play with spreadsheets because that was not obviously my area of expertise or responsibility. And indeed, that's not an area where I have any reason to think there's anything we need to change. there are definitely things in terms of policies and the planning side that we've talked about. Interestingly, peer communities is not in their template as a policy. We did have a little bit of, during one of the coffee breaks, we chatted with some of the folks there. I actually forget who came over with me. Maybe Matt was there. And they did have some feedback on our existing peer community list. The first was that they thought it was oddly large with 23, which is funny because filtering 350 down to 23 is a pretty big filtering right there. And at some point you just get to you're not just like, I'm just going to do whatever Wakefield does. No, you need more. You need multiple peers to get a range of options. There isn't, no disrespect to any of our neighboring towns, but there's no one town that I want to emulate in everything. There's probably not even, 5. Although maybe that is the right number. I don't know. Let's see. So I did make notes on, there were things that the template had this nice thing where they had different color-coded things for you to fill in. And some of them were sort of mechanical things like the name of your town and the title of the person in town staff who is responsible for this. So, we have a CFO and you have only a town accountant and no one with the CFO title, whatever. That's all mechanical. Then they had things that were highlighted in yellow where you have to make a choice. Like, what is your annual funding target for capital and debt? Ours, as everybody here knows, is 5% right now. There are other ones where we don't have that set as far as I know. I wasn't able to find, although I have not gotten to read that pink binder. I don't actually want to read the whole pink binder, but it doesn't mean I don't know what's in it. So, for example, do we have a formal definition of what, makes something a capital improvement versus being in the expenses line for your department? Or, how do we decide when we go to town meeting for something, whether we want to use, included debt or just cash in the operating budget or cash from free cash? We have weighed in on that. This committee has weighed in on whether something should be free cash or borrowing before, but we were there wasn't a standard policy that we were following in doing so. So there's an opportunity to put down some guidelines around that. Let's see. There's interesting, they talked about, having a target for debt service in total, which would include excluded debt. That would certainly change the numbers a lot in this town because the amount of excluded debt is getting real big. It's going from 0 this happy year. I hope everyone please take a moment to appreciate your real estate bills this year, and then sigh. So we will have a lot of excluded debt, and we know that's something that the amount of debt in total, not just included or excluded, is something that rating agencies look at. Someone asked where FinCom reserve amounts come from, and indeed, ours is 200,000 because it was 200,000 last year. That's the system. I think maybe there's no need to reserve that one because we've not been asked to use the whole amount. I don't know. Maybe we've been asked kind of close to the whole amount, so we certainly don't want to find ourselves in a position where we can't, meet some emergency need. On the other hand, also that is setting aside money that normally just goes back to free cash. And one other thing that we did talk about was the use of free cash. And, I was really hoping for a better answer from the folks from the state about we budget conservatively. Don't tell me, and certainly don't tell Sharon, not to budget conservatively. But the effect of budgeting conservatively is that you have regeneration. And I do think maybe some places deal with this by not having that 5% for capital and debt like we do, and instead they don't. That gives them 5% more for their operating budget, which takes away the need for free cash, and then they spend all the same amount of free cash on capital, which basically means they've done exactly what we have, but they moved the things around before they did it, which is not a.
Is that because there was an absence of policy on their end?
It's well. So
we have the 5%.
You need a mic. But go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, because we have a 5% policy. So I'm asking, do they do it that way because there's an absence of that 5% policy? So they take it out of free cash.
You would. If you don't spend on capital, bad things happen. I think the short answer is yes. I mean, there's also this principled objection to the use of free cash that folks have, but again, I haven't really heard I haven't heard how it's actually different or changes like how many taxes people pay and what services they get.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if this would have come out, but like I look at the fact that there's that 5% policy. It's very similar to like like as an individual where you save first and spend later. You know what I mean? Like so there's a priority in how you kind of you budget for yourself. And I think by if you're investing in capital based on what's left, then you may not always hit 5. And so I think that's and I think this having the policy and the discipline that we have leads us to, in the long term, a consistently better position because everything's well maintained, because we are spending the 5%, and then we're spending out of free cash on the back end.
At a minimum, it's better maintained. I think well might be some of the folks in public works driving trucks that are 15 years old might have differences with well, but it's certainly better maintained. I agree 100%. Sharon.
So I think that what I got from it is that our policy of the 5% debt and capital is unique. That I don't think that that's what's done in other communities. I think that people look at free cash should be used for one-time uses, and they'll look at it for capital. And a lot of times, whatever they regenerated the last year, that's what they'll spend on capital. I think our approach is much more disciplined with the 5% because we are putting $3-4 million towards capital every year. And so the small amount that we used to use usually was up to like $1.5 million prior to inflation hitting. We did not use anything outrageous, and we had far exceeding what we would, like we would spend more on capital than what we would use from our free cash. This use of free cash at this high level has only been over the last couple of years where inflation has harmed our budget so greatly. I don't think that our style prior to that was problematic because I feel like we had that commitment to the capital. And we are not just doing it because we have regeneration. Okay, we have money, we'll put it towards capital. That's not our commitment. Our commitment is 5%. We build our budget that way, and we fill a little bit of the gap with that free cash because it is a one-time use sort of thing. It's not something we have to do every single year. I don't have to buy a fire truck every year, but a lot of times they'll look at capital as that one thing that they should be able to use it for because it's a one-time thing. It's something that you don't have to spend your money on every year. I think our commitment to doing the 5% is what makes our budget unique and makes this work. And that's why we always use the free cash as some sort of a component to it to help fund some of the capital so that huge amount of capital that we're committed to spending, that it doesn't completely bury the whole operating budget. I mean, every year there's at a minimum $3 million of capital in that budget, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, depending on how much debt is there. And prior to the inflationary period, we were putting in no more than $2 million of free cash. So there was always a good portion that was funded just from our regular operating budget. I think it's really hard when people haven't seen our budget and how we build our budget and how different it is from other communities to really make a judgment call on if what we're doing makes sense. I mean, I'm not in favor of how much free cash we've had to use the last few years because of what inflation has done to our budget. But generally, I'm not against the way we were doing it prior because I feel that commitment is there to the capital, is to not let things slide and let things, end up being problems before they're taken care of. Like, I think that's the biggest concern. And right now, our capital plan is in that space where we have every line item has like how many years that asset's going to last. What dictates where I move it has to do with balancing that 5% with how old is that asset and how long can we expect it to last? And can we get another year or can we not? And that's where those conversations with the mechanics and the people who run those departments become very crucial to where I put it on the capital plan. This unexpected thing happened so I feel like it's really hard to compare us to others because our budget looks so different. A lot of other communities don't do the accommodated costs where we take those heavy hitters off the top before we start to split the money between the town and the school. So it's really hard to compare ourselves to another community because we take a very different approach. I haven't changed anything that Bob set up because I feel like it was really well thought out and it works for us. And I just carry forward what he put in place because it's always worked for us. And since I've been here, free cash has been rising, rising, rising. Inflation is not something that any community escaped over the last 3 years. What we're seeing is something that's across the board. You can't have double-digit growth on a lot of line items within a budget that's going to have an increase of 3.2 maybe percent of revenues. You can't have multiple line items growing by double digits and not have that impact you. The math isn't going to work. And so that's why we have this. We're buying ourselves time right now. And I just feel like their answers of you should never use free cash. You're not really looking at what we're doing. You don't see the commitments that we've made to this budget every year, and I think that's important to note.
Sure. Did you already have an appreciation for how different, we do our budget versus other towns, or was there more things that were highlighted in this discussion that you kind of learned through it that?
I've always known.
Yeah.
I used to be an auditor earlier in my career. I used to audit cities and towns, so I knew right away when I came to Reading that our model was very much well thought out and very different from what I'd seen in the past. So, and that's why I stick to it, because it works. I do think it's lousy to be in the situation we're in, and it's painful to have to try and pick our moment to figure out when we right the ship, because all these costs have blown up out of control. But I still support the way we do things because I feel like it's always worked. And I felt like some of the comments coming from DOR was like, well, why not be less conservative? When I say conservative, I'm telling you that the number I'm putting there is probably very much likely the actual number from the prior year of revenue that was collected. So that's not overly conservative. That's the safe number, right? And it still could go down. Motor vehicle being a prime example.
That was what I was going to say. They said you can't do more than 90% of your previous year, and yet I remember several years where you said, I raised it, and still people bought more cars.
The other thing is so why is the one telling you not to do that? Like when I do my recap, if I started to say, okay, I got $4 million in motor vehicle excise, I think I'll get 4.3 next year, but I only got 4. They're going to question me on it. They're not going to let my recap go through like that. They're going to say, you need to show me where you got that number, that you're so sure that you're going to get that. They can see the actual of the prior year and they'll be very comfortable with that. You start pushing that number upwards and they start questioning. So they'll tell you one thing, but then when you're trying to set your tax rate, it's a very different situation. They're like, well, show me where this revenue is coming from. How do you know for sure you'll have it? You can't justify it. It's an up and down thing, and a lot of what goes on with our local revenues are very reliant on how the economy is doing and how people are feeling. They have, whether or not they have disposable income or not. People are buying less cars when they feel like they don't have as much disposable income. They're going to hold their car for longer. They're going to go out to eat less. We get less meals tax. We are very much impacted about how people are feeling about what they have going on financially and whether or not they need to halt their spending or slow their spending. We will feel those impacts year to year. So we have to be very sensitive to what's going on around us and not be overly optimistic. That's the smart thing to do. I felt like the comments being made were like I was cheating the taxpayers by being overly conservative. I'm pushing those numbers up as high as I can, and still we're falling short because there's just no way to close the gap so large because of all that's gone on. I mean, I'm like, just to think about just even this past year, we had 39% for rubbish and 14% for health insurance. And those are big numbers to start off with, and you're going to grow them at that rate. And somehow I'm supposed to cover that within a 3.2% revenue growth. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just thinking about it, you have to actually realize that math is never going to work. Prop 2.5 does not help us. It hurts us. And we have to be very careful about what we do. And then I also don't want to go to town meeting and say, I overprojected my revenues, now you need to give me free cash. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was overly optimistic, now forgive me, give me more free cash. Like, I'd rather tell them up front, I think there's a likelihood we might need some free cash and put it in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that is a safer way to go. I felt like they were just never use it. Well, I think our scenario looks a little different than most. And I just wanted to say that.
So I wasn't able to go to this.
Sorry, I wasn't able to go to this meeting, but listening to what you're saying, Sharon, did you all get a sense, I mean, do towns run things differently than cities where you said, you're going to have to go to town meeting and explain something? Someone like in the city of Melrose, they're not accountable. They're not going to get as many direct facing inquiries that they may get their city councilors or whatever it's called there, and then people who come to public comment at the meeting. But I feel, especially with like representative town meeting, though, the other kinds of town meeting, anyone can show up, that you're going to get that many more hits and questions. And I guess the other point is where you feel like some people were saying, why are we so conservative? You could almost push back, like, is our situation with our money better than the way the state is running theirs? And like for the people who want to be less conservative, are they just having failing overrides, or the state can just they're not they can say things, but they're not living the reality of trying to get an override passed.
I mean, and I'm just bringing you back to what I presented at Financial Forum. We had something that I had put in the packet that showed what percentages each community in Massachusetts is using of their reserves, and most of them are using all the reserves, or almost all of them. We were up at the top of the range. Even though we're using so much, the percentage still is lower. And I think it's because we've had this commitment to the capital. And, I bet you a lot of these communities are doing bare minimum capital, whatever they can afford, and that's it. The way we've done this is a very disciplined way of saying we can't let anything go. We have to do at least a certain percentage. That percentage holds us accountable to ourselves. And I think it's a better way of doing things. And I thought that they were just matter-of-factly saying you should never do it. I think you have to look at the situation in its totality to actually get the situation.
Andrew, go ahead.
Just wanting to make a comment on what previously Sharon said about the capital plan and the way that we do it. I've looked into it. I know it causes a lot of pressure on what you have to move out and what you have to pick and choose. And that's a discussion that I think we should definitely look at if 5% it's actually still feasible, because we've been at 5% for a long time. Actually, we've been forever at 5%. So it's something that to consider in the future. Maybe we can pick it up and have a discussion about it, if 5% is still feasible.
Yeah, no, I certainly took away, one of my big takeaways was understanding the relationship between how we do capital planning and how we use free cash. And that's sort of the, if you frame it as we are imprecise at budgeting and then we end up with using a lot of free cash, that makes us sound sloppy. But that's not the reality. The reality is that we are committing to spend a certain amount on capital, and then we are taking, our budgeting is not less precise than everyone else's. It's just that we put ours back into the operating budget and then spend it on capital there, as opposed to other people who spend it on capital, but they don't spend anything from the operating budget on capital, which means they're not reliably spending on capital. And if you say this is about using free cash, it sounds reckless. If you say this is about reliably spending on capital, you see it's actually very responsible. So, there's Karen, go ahead. Did you want Joe, did you have a hand up?
Oh, just quickly, probably saying the same thing, different way, but I look at that 5%, something to just basic personal finance, pay yourself first, put that money away into savings or 401k, and then you deal with what you can do from an operating perspective, right? And I think, yes, we can, definitely discuss should it be 5%, 3%, 6%, but I love taking that off the top because I think it just keeps you so much more disciplined. And in terms of the conservative accounting, the only thing, if I was sharing, I'd struggle with is interest income. We have a much bigger amount sitting there in free cash and trying to game interest rates, I guess, on interest rates. I think we've seen some variability and surprises there, but I don't know a better way of doing that, right? So.
Ed.
So I'm maybe just kind of taking this off in probably the next leg of it, and this may be a little bit kind of forward thinking. everything that I think we're talking about as far as, the order of operations, as far as how the budget's, kind of created. I do think as we start to get into this next leg where we start to talk about how we replenish, I think the one thing that I'm hearing that I think will help, kind of tell the story is the discipline that's also used when you set the operating budget post all of this. I think there is a lot of hard decisions that are made consistently every year on how to do that and what gets added, what gets cut, or what doesn't get added. And so I think that thread is, I think, something that we just need to socialize more. Because I echo, kind of what Joe's kind of first comment is that, we're very lucky to have, you in this position, and the discipline that we use. I think it gets lost on the general public. They don't understand the detail. I think we just need to figure out a way to distill it a little bit better. And I think there's a lot of decisions that are made on staff and other expenses that are made post, kind of capital planning that I think need to be highlighted as well. I think this is not just how we maintain from a capital perspective. There's a lot of other decisions that are made there, again, because of the order that we do that. And I think we should lean into and talk about more, because it's a very impressive discipline. And I would challenge, other folks that think that the town is reckless, because that inevitably will come up. It always does. And I think that's something that we need to prepare for and be able to explain. And not to barely that we have a good story there. That's why I'm not saying that you're crafting. I just think it's telling it, because it is done with an expert discipline.
All right. So there's another dimension of policy that we've talked about that hasn't come up in this discussion yet, since I think we all agreed that we all love Sharon and being responsible. So go team. But then is the question of how we structure our cash and reserves. The way we do things right now, we have our policy versus our minimum target for reserves, 7%, and we've talked about whether it needs to be 10% because of rating agencies and so forth. Our current policy actually, says a balance less than 5% requires formal review by the committee, but that's 5% would be low. But one thing we don't do is we have a general stabilization fund. I understand it's created like after the last override, and we put $2 million in it, and then we forgot it exists. Which, we didn't forget it exists. It counts towards our 7% every year. But as far as I know, there's no policy for when anything should ever go into it or come out of it. One might, some people will look at our, if the town does, or this isn't the board that decides whether or not to put forward an override, but if the town does put forward an override this year, people are going to look at the absolute amount of our free cash and they're going to say, well, free cash is free, and there's there's still this whatever how many digit number, and so surely I don't need to pay for a tax override because we have a lot of free cash. Like, well, no, the free cash is both stuff we could spend on a one-time thing, and it is also our reserves. It is also we don't so, and this might be the wrong time because I'm afraid our reserves are going to get smaller before they get bigger again. But I wonder if after the next override is the next time to maybe evolve that policy to have a better defined, like, no, this is free cash when town meeting needs to spend $1 million for a feasibility study for whatever, like that's where we pay it from and it's no big deal. And this is stabilization fund where if you think about touching this, it's already time to talk about an override. So that's a policy question. I don't think 2026 might not be the year to pose that question, but I think it's an important one, and will hopefully help the next override after this one be further away and smoother.
I think it's a good idea. I think that's a really good idea, Joe.
Karen.
Karen Herrick, Reading Select Board. Great discussion as usual. And I was energized leaving that. I'm always energized after DLS comes and talks to us. I guess I'm a policy wonk.
And they say that I'm the nerd.
I know. Well, we're all nerdy about different areas, but this got me so excited. And thank you for Matt and Jane for making this. For Matt, first of all, making it regional, because that just really was helpful. And there was a lot of good energy in the room. And Sharon was proven right time and time after again. So that's all good. None of that's bad. And I appreciate I don't know how you guys figured out who would attend, but I appreciate all of the effort. It was 4 hours and an excellent showing from the select board as well. And so some of the takeaways are that this is definitely a collaborative process with the select board and the finance committee, which makes sense because some of these policy decisions need to go through town meeting. We need to get their buy-in. So that collaboration is always good. And I know I heard somebody say, I'm not really that interested in like some of the operations stuff, but I think as a select board member and having lived here for 30 years, I was like, I learned more about how some of the things operate in town, the checks and balances, how we keep things organized than I ever have. So that was really useful from that perspective as well, and also raised my anxiety a little bit, because we talked about like transitions. So one of the value adds of having more policies and maybe extending existing policies in place is that it's a communication tool for bringing finance committee members up to speed, for bringing select board members up to speed, for God love us if Sharon ever decides to not work here anymore. Like it's a living document that helps, even within the town manager's office and within Sharon's area, now that your staff is a bit bigger, to just help get everybody on the same page. So I look forward to really like going through this a little bit more after you guys have had a chance. And, there were some examples like, we could further define, say, the policy exceptions, like OPEB, like this body, and we all agreed that we were going to, when you're not too in the distant past, we were not going to fully fund it. So that actually could be in the policy that, like, under what circumstances would we do that? And I'm a big fan of some of the things that Joe was talking about the stability accounts. I think we really need some policies around where do we want that to be? When do we fund it? When would we consider going into it? And then, here's another idea. Well, again, or you can have exceptions. If this group and the select board were to, spend a little time thinking about this, you might say, a couple of years ago, we were in the opposite situation where you were like, oh, wow, I like to budget conservatively and there's nothing wrong with that. And then free cash came back like a lot bigger than you expected. It was posited that we could have a policy that says when a windfall shows up like that, you could put it somewhere, you could park it somewhere, because getting back to some of the other comments about how we allocate capital, I worry when our free cash like balance gets so high that we then start investing in capital projects, and then in the situation we're in now, and it's not simple, it's complex, but we invested a lot in capital, and we're going to turn around and need to talk about an operational override, and we no longer have the free cash to support that. So that keeps me up at night. But one piece of advice that GLS gave us, or mentioned to me before we left, was that, wondering, our free cash balances are so high and we're making a large contribution, and so we do it differently than other people. But one way to get a handle on that, which would be educational for the select board and perhaps you all, or some of you, is that what are all the inputs that go in and out of free cash for the last couple of years, and maybe take them down a level from what we've been doing. So, because we do things, and some of them may be small. So we do things differently than other towns. I've heard there've been requests to maybe send some of the permitting funds from the Conservation Commission into a budget for the Conservation Commission. Now they're just going to free cash, and I think I've heard some other examples as well. But anyway, that was one suggestion, to maybe do a little analysis on what on any given year what goes into free cash, and just maybe take it to the next level, because I know we do some of that already. But thank you for making that a regional event, and thank you all who attended. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, we're going to get there, and I see this as a precursor to a very difficult decision that we're going to have to make as a town. You know, whether we're going to have to talk about bringing an override and what it's going to pay for and how big it's going to be. Thank you.
I'm looking around for other hands. No, thank you all very much for the comments and input, and I look forward to, sounds like Matt and Sharon have some plans to look at some things. You know, please share with us, let us know how we can help. Yeah.
How do you want me to, do we want to take it in pieces? Like I'll review a few, and then maybe we schedule a meeting with the select board and FinCom so that they can hear, is that something that would be, I think one of the things that I don't think they really addressed, I think they kept saying the select board would approve all the policies, but in some cases that confused me, because in some of our policies are FinCom approved, some of them are select board approved. So that piece I'm not really. The last time we did an update of the select board policies, I did that a few years back with the select board, and it didn't cover all of the policies that FinCom has. So I'm not sure where the line is drawn of who's supposed to approve what policy. So that's something we might need Ivria's help for, because that piece was a little bit foggy for me in terms of why is it that this policy got approved by FinCom and these ones went to select, I don't know where the line is drawn. But I don't think it's a bad idea for both select board and FinCom to chime in as we update these policies and make sure that we're happy with what's in there. And so I don't have a problem with us meeting as a group and stuff, but I do want Ivria to kind of give me some guidance on who has to vote to put this into place, or should it be both, or should it be what? That's the piece I was kind of left still baffled with. And I didn't think to ask. I figured I could ask Ivria because I had a meeting budding right up after our meeting, so I had to go.
Yep. No, I think it's a fair question. It does seem like in other communities, the policies were set by different boards than in our community, and I'm not sure if that's. I mean, given that they're policies and not, binding laws, there's no legal. No one goes to jail if the reserves go below 7%. That we do have a very bad year, but the. Yeah, so, in a sense, they're all advisory. So my guess is it's probably a little bit loosey-goosey, but at the same time, we certainly don't want to have conflicting policies. No, thank you. So yeah, we should absolutely align on.
They seem to be separate.
Yeah, which is, and that's fine. That's fine. You can take turns, whatever. We can play nicely. But yeah, no. If there are any rules, obviously, we'd love to follow them. So please do let us know.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Then in that case, let's keep moving along on our agenda. So there's an item for Birch Meadow light fixture failure replacement.
So speaking of capital failure, we haven't had a meeting since November, so this is a little bit old news, but I just wanted to bring this to this board. This is FYI at this point, but so if you missed the Daily Times Chronicle in late October, the nor'easter we had knocked one or two of the poles clean off the the big softball field. Very lucky no one was there at the time. Could have been terrible, but no one was hurt. Everything was great. Well, not great, but so Jim Sullivan, the recreation administrator, worked with RMLD and DPW to go assess the situation, make sure it was, safety was the number one priority. And so 4 of the poles were damaged in the storm, and had to be removed immediately. Once they were inspected, they were given a 30-day timeline to make sure that they were out. And they had somebody come in and inspect the remaining poles that weren't damaged, and they were all, kind of tilting and leaning. If you are down around that area, you know that those are old and probably past their useful life. So, due to the safety concerns and the inability for any of the remaining poles to actually hold any lights effectively or safely, they decided to remove everything under that emergency work order. So the good thing was they worked with existing town staff, and DPW and RMLD were able to take out the poles, no cost to the town, so that was good. There was some minor related electrical work to make sure no one got electrocuted. That was $540, and the town received a $25,000 insurance payment related to those pole failures. So that's been kind of set aside somewhere to be put toward future lighting. So Jim worked with a vendor to get a quote to replace these 4 damaged poles. It came in somewhere around, there were a few between $70,000 and $95,000 or so. But after talking it through with the Recreation Committee and with other town staff, they decided that's not the way to go because, enhanced lighting is part of Birch Meadow Phase 3. But there is an operational impact for these being down. He's already reached out to all the people that use it in the summer and early fall, including men's softball league, youth soccer, youth lacrosse, and youth football, and youth softball. So everybody knows there's no lights for the foreseeable future. But I wanted to put it on this committee's radar just because this is a potential, unplanned capital expense that will be coming. So Jim's in the process right now of getting some quotes on what it will take to tie it into the new Musco lighting. So in Birch Meadow Phase 1 and 2, we have Musco is the company that has done the lighting, and they've set us up basically. So when Phase 3 comes along, it's just a, tie into the new grid that they put in. So, he's in the process of getting bids. We might see something maybe fall town meeting, maybe next spring town meeting. So it's far off, but initial gut check estimates are somewhere in the $300,000 to $500,000 range to kind of get these back online. So yeah, it's FYI. If you have questions, I've been talking to Jim for like 4 straight hours about this, so I can probably answer them. And if I can't, we can find out. So. Do I get to call?
Yep. I'll still call on people. Ouch. Okay. But yes. All right. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification question. You said that there were 4 that were damaged; those were taken out, and then other ones were taken out.
Yep.
And then there was a bid to replace the 4 damaged ones that came in at $75,000 to $90,000.
Yep.
Is that only the 4 damaged ones, and then the other ones would be put back, or what's the?
So my understanding, but I can get clarification from Jim, is that they just wanted to see what it would cost to put up new wooden similar poles that are required to light the field. So once they did that initial, the ones that were damaged that had to come down, and they did the subsequent inspection, that was all in the area too. So I think it included some in the Castine side. And so I think the bid was only related to like getting lights back online on new wooden poles with the existing bad light fixtures. Not bad, but old.
Joe, I see Mark on Zoom, but I think, Joe, you were raising Jeffrey already, so go ahead, Joe.
Just Emily, just to clarify, so are you saying in Phase 3 we had money allocated to replace these lights, or?
So the Birch Meadow sorry, Joe. So the Birch Meadow master plan kind of set up, what is the ideal for Birch Meadow to look like over the next, 10 to 15 years as they build it out. So Phase 1 was funded and completed. Phase 2 was funded and in process. Phase 3 is not even funded yet. It's just, the vision of what we want. And that includes lighting not only for the softball field there, but I think over at Morton and by the Little League field. So, but it's visionary. It's not an actual thing. So, and I think on the capital plan, that's many, many years out at this point. So, I think they're hoping that this can come to town meeting, obviously not this spring, that would be lunatic, but maybe by next spring, so that they don't have to go multiple summers where we can't use the field in the way that it's been used historically.
For some sports, can I assume they use those generator type lights? Are you looking at that? Or?
Yep. Yeah. So that's why he reached out to all the different leagues that use it to figure out what the options are. But it won't work for men's softball. So it sounds like men's softball's off for this year, or they're going to have to find space in another town or something.
Okay, thanks.
Mark?
Hey, Emily, do you know there was a problem with those lights for softball not being high enough? Like, are the new poles, are they planning to fix that issue?
They're all down, and at this point, they're not planning to replace them until they can do a better, more permanent solution that aligns with, the lighting solutions they have for phase 1 and 2 already. So everything now is down. It's all been taken down and removed. I don't know if that answered you.
And no night use of the field.
No night use without the use of portable generators is for the foreseeable future.
Can't think of anything.
Yeah.
I was. My quip was going to be the only thing that the neighbors will like less than the lights, the sound of the generators. But so yes, all right. And I would imagine newer lights are probably better for light pollution. So there you go. All right. Other comments, questions, or for that matter, quips? No. All right. Let's move on to future agendas. So the sort of elephant in the whole parade of elephants, because there's a school budget and there's a town budget and there's the town meeting warrant. We have weekly meetings on the calendar starting on the 25th with the school budget, and presumably the town budget following whatever that is, 4th. I guess a month from today, and that's how February works. Well, it'll be the 4th. Mark has a hand up. But you're muted. Mark, you're muted.
Sorry about that. What would be nice for future agendas is sort of an update on where the bid processes are on all these capital projects we've got. Like we found out tonight about recalc, and tomorrow the bids will be in. But it'd be nice to see, where those other capital projects are at too.
Joe.
Sure. Yeah, we can bring those to a future meeting.
Yeah, and I'll catch up. I just missed the last meeting, but I'll have more on Killam.
That's good. And we're certainly interested in both. All right. Process. Let's see. Karen, I don't know if you want me to put you on the spot. You emailed me with some thoughts about future agenda topics. I could read your email, or you could speak for yourself. But well, you emailed me.
Hey, how's your cats? Thank you.
They're great. You did not actually ask for that. Yes, no, you asked about the Municipal Empowerment Act and about OPEB.
Yeah, with the pleasure of the chair and you all, Municipal Empowerment Act 2.0 is before the legislature. It does give you some flexibility to potentially raise some revenue and provide some additional senior tax relief and low income tax relief. So I thought this committee might be interested to take a look at that. Where it's the second version, I'm going to wildly assume that, there's some back and forth and this one has a better shot of passing. And then the other thing I came across, because I was so excited about the DLS seminar, was Andover had a committee and took a time to come up with a whole bunch of OPED advisory committee recommendations, thoughts, and with the pleasure of the chair, that might be an interesting discussion for this committee to have regards to our OPED policy or reducing our potential liability. And yeah, I did send that to Joe, so you can share that with everybody. That's it. Thank you.
So yeah, so the challenge there is working those topics in because we have a pretty busy schedule over our next few meetings. But we can take a look at how we're doing as we plan each week and see if we can fit these things in. It sounds like maybe the discussion of the Municipal Empowerment Act might be. I don't actually know the legislative calendar. We'll have to know if we wanted to have any opinion on that, express from a delegation or something, what the time frame we'd have to do that by. But okay, sure. Thanks. All right. Obviously, our number one job is the budget. That's what we're gonna. That's anything else we can get to in the next month is bonus. Joe,
just quickly, it's probably a question for Matt, but for the budget from the town, it'd be good. I'm not sure what you're planning to present. It's pretty far away, but to make sure like head count's included. And just get ahead of like the common questions we have and have them standardized across department. And I know what you did for the select board. I think some of the color commentary is helpful too.
Yeah, that's great. And my plan, I was going to ask this anyway if you wanted anything to change, but doing what we've done in prior years, so department heads will come. It won't be a formal presentation. They've already done that at the select board meetings, but they will sort of orally highlight some of the changes in their budget, some of their thinking around that, and then open it up for questions. And of course, any line that you have before you in the budget, you can ask them questions on. They can answer those questions. And head count, things like that is something we include routinely in the budget document. So they'll be prepared to do that as well. And then we'll work through it. We'll do a wrap up. Any obviously suggestions you can let us know, and then we would close the budget out and get it ready to go to town meeting. On the second, I think usually we do it in 2 nights. On the second night, we'll also talk about warrant articles and have you vote on those. I'm putting the draft together now regarding those. So unless there's any changes, that's the way. I think as long as I've been town manager, and then before that, because I was a department head, it seemed to work well this way. So, thank you.
I guess I should note we will actually be. I think the plan is tentatively do the same as last year, because the charter obliges us to hold a public hearing on the budget.
Yes.
Jack's reached out to me about when that should be. I think that should be what we did last year. It was the first night of the town budget presentation, which I think makes sense. And then we could presumably close the hearing then if we get through all the town budget presentation that night, or continue it if we're doing more, if we haven't covered all the departments or whatever.
Sounds good.
All right. Anything else on the topic of future agendas? All right. We have some minutes to review and approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 5th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting as presented.
Second. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Joe, for the second. Any other comments or questions before we vote? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. Starting on Zoom, Mark.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Marianne.
Yes.
Joe McDonough.
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ed. Sorry, it was very close. Very close. All right. Voting. Mark.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Henry. Yes. Emily.
Yes.
Marianne.
Yes.
Joe McDonough.
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. We are adjourned. I'll even use the shiny gavel.